Hey there guys, welcome to the Stokesy and Stoner Show, episode number 10. Thank you for tuning in. Today we got an action-packed one for you. I'm going to be covering the RBI's recent interest rate cut. Why is this relevant to crypto? Well, it's highly relevant to crypto because what we need to gauge is what is actually happening in world markets. And interestingly, I'm going to dive into this a little bit in terms of Australia's CPI, Consumer Price Index, and the reserve rate cut, and give you my opinion on what this actually means. And I'm going to have a look at some interesting data to go along with that. Following that, I'm going to be looking at a new investment product that is about to be launched in the United States that allows you to gain access to things like the S&P 500 with Bitcoin. So this is an index that is collateralized by Bitcoin and crypto, which is extremely interesting and is starting to show how Bitcoin itself is becoming or replacing money. So fascinating stuff, followed by a very interesting project in our coin pick for the week. Adam, over to you for what you have got in store for us tonight.
Stoner, great to see you again. Happy 10th anniversary, my crypto brother. I'll be checking out these scams that are starting to bubble to the surface, coming up through using sites such as ABC as covers to promote a scam. We've got to be careful of these. And I'll also be reporting on a daily HODL article about the bull market, irrespective of what we're seeing lately in the pullback.
So stick around, guys. It's going to be a jam-packed show tonight. We thank you for tuning in. So stick around and let's get into the show. So welcome back, everyone. Thank you again for tuning in to this Stokesy and Stoner Show, episode number 10. Starting off, as we always do, taking a look at the markets. Now, this is probably the first time in the past at least 5 to 6 weeks that we've seen some red on the evening that we've done this episode. We've seen quite a sharp pullback with Bitcoin in the past couple of days. It's affected most of the market. As we know, the most of the market is correlated to Bitcoin. So whatever Bitcoin does, the rest of the market does as well. The market follows Bitcoin. But we've seen this pullback come under $10,000. What does this mean at a high level? Well, it simply means that Bitcoin had an extremely quick run up. It was arguably overheated, and the market going through its paces has a pullback. There's a little bit of FUD, well, not FUD, but the opposite of FOMO, as people panic sell, sell orders are tripped, and people pull out. The market takes a little bit of a tumble. Short term, who cares? Medium term, who cares? Long term, who cares? That is my overall sentiment, is you long this bad boy. You long this to the high hill. So if anything, this is just giving another opportunity for people to get a little bit at a half decent price. Adam, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. We can't have this vertical climb, and as we've seen, this massive run up, it would have crossed that 5-figure mark. Yes, it smashed straight past up to $13,000, bounced around at 13, then it's been floating around the $11,000 mark, and today we see even more pullback coming down to $10,254 as of tonight, 2nd of July 2019. Will this drop below the 5-figure mark? Who knows? But as you said, Bo, look, we're all in this for the long run, and we will look back at this as a snapshot in history of like, well, do you remember when it was going to cross $6,000 and then $10,000 and then $13,000? As we saw past the $100,000 mark in the future, this will be a mere blip on the radar. It's great to have a healthy bit of pullback, and even if it does drop back further over the next few days, possibly weeks, this thing is moving quickly. I'm not concerned at all. Going down the charts, Bo, looking at the last 7 days, as you said, pretty much one of our first times on our 10th anniversary of having this pretty consistent sea of red, especially in the top 10. Bitcoin down 9.27%, XRP down 15%, Litecoin also pulling back 13%. We knew the halving was coming up. It is still coming up, and there was a big run up, but consistently everything is pulling back. Bitcoin Cash down 16, EOS down 18%, Binance Coin, we're not surprised about this because it was constantly on the up and up, currently $32 per coin, but pulling back 12%. Bitcoin SV is about to be squeezed out of the top 10 position, with Tron possibly, in my opinion, going to swap over with it. Going further down the chart, we can see one of the new entries into the top 20, Chainlink, looking at Chainlink here over the last 7 days, look at that, 72% in 7 days, new to the top 20, not a new coin, but certainly in the top 20 and running up nicely. And also Neo, I want to mention. We thought Neo was dead, Bo, but it looks like it's making a bit of a recovery. Although it is red at the moment, it looks like Neo's going to come back.
Yeah, and it's actually one of the lower losses against all the other major big cap coins. I mean, we've got Bitcoin at down 9.2 and Ethereum down 9.5, which is to be expected. They're generally suffer the lowest losses in these cycles because they have the highest liquidity, highest market cap, highest awareness, blah blah blah. They're big coins, so if you think about a big ship is hard to turn around, and these coins behave in that manner. But Neo, only down 6.97%, shows quite a lot of strength in terms of this protocol's recent rise, and I think is a good indicator potentially on where this is going to go. You mentioned Chainlink. I can't remember if I did a SWOT review of Chainlink or I wrote a blog. I remember looking into Chainlink in detail, and I remember one of my comments, this was over a year ago, was that it was a highly technical, if not academically presented project, and that was going to be one of the hurdles for people to get over with learning about it. It was highly technical. But I believe Chainlink was recently listed on Coinbase, or will be listed on Coinbase soon. So a very good thing for the project to achieve that status of a listing on Coinbase. But yeah, look, overall, and just in the past hour, and we've seen a short recovery, so maybe things are picking back up. Who knows? Mate, over to you for the closeout on the markets, and then leading into this article we have here from the ABC.
Yeah, closing off on those markets, Chainlink is interesting with a total supply of 1 billion, but it's only a circulating supply of 350 million. So there's still a lot more coins to come into that market. But I'd be interested to see where this one goes, whether it's just a pump and dump. But as I mentioned, and as you mentioned, it's not new, it's just new to the top 20. But what is also not new to the crypto space is unfortunately the scams. So over to an article from ABC. Now, just a quick little story for you, Bo. Recently, a good friend wrote to me. They know I'm in the crypto space, and they sent me a message saying, "Hey, Adam, have you seen this article?" And the article was, in fact, bringing up this image of two prominent figures in the public space. Someone from ABC and someone from Channel 10. I won't say his name because I don't want to promote him in a good or positive light. We'll keep this neutral because we're about crypto, and a billionaire next to him. And it's basically a fake news article. And it's not their first time they've done this. And I'd actually mention they create this same model in every country. So this is how it works. They make an article that looks like news, and they put many sponsors on this article that looks like it's a real news story. And if you're not familiar with what's happening, you take a prominent public figure or TV figure or billionaire, you put it against a series of words that have been written by a scam site, and you get buy-in. And the article, I tried to send you the link to this prior to the video, Bo, but of course when we went to open this link, it was dead and it went to something else. Instead of going to the article that was a scam, the scam has now changed its destination in the link that was originally sent to me by my friend just yesterday. So just yesterday they sent me a link saying, "Have you seen this?" When I opened the link yesterday, I'm like, "That's a scam." Then when I try to open the same link today, the link is going to a different site. It's redirected. But essentially, the news from ABC says, fake news articles are circulating which promote a Bitcoin scam and include content purported to be from the ABC. The articles are being disseminated through social media advertising, predominantly on Facebook. The scam ads are tagged as ABC articles, have pictures of staged to look like ABC TV screenshots, and include quotes under the headline of ABC News Exclusive. These articles are entirely fabricated. We encourage our audience to exercise caution when reading social media advertisements and articles concerning cryptocurrencies which bear the ABC logo. Now, in this instance, Bo, they're using ABC, but as I mentioned, I've seen these when I've been traveling around the world. They do the same format. They take the same article, but they change the images to be images of prominent figures or news reporters from the country of origin. So they've got the same thing in England and America and throughout the globe, even in different languages. Please, viewers, let your friends know and let yourself know, but you're probably, if you're watching this now, you're probably quite experienced in the crypto space. Let people know that if they see an article that claims to be news, how it works is this way. Besides the images they put in there, they just talk about how good cryptocurrency is. So the first part is like, yeah, that's really good and true because cryptocurrency is good. Then the last part of the article is a case study. It's a case study of a testimonial or series of testimonials where people talk about investing in this magical system where they put in $100 and made thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's greatly concerning to anyone who loses money in the crypto space or in any type of scam, but it's also concerning to us who are experienced because it brings a bad name and bad reputation to the entire space. I close off with this, Bo. If you do come across this, remember in Australia, part of our great nation of the Commonwealth of Australia, we have a place called Scamwatch, and Scamwatch is a great organisation. It's a government organisation, that is, it's supported by the government. You can go to their site, which is scamwatch.gov.au. I'll leave a link below. Or you can call them directly on 1300 795 995 and either report a scam or ask about if you think something is a scam. Be careful out there, guys.
Yeah, look, that's really important, Adam, and thank you for sharing that with us. And I'll tell you guys a little bit of a story, actually, that happened to me about a year ago. So in my position as the channel was growing big, I would get contacted by so many projects. I mean, it was overwhelming, and I would look into most of them. And this one time I got contacted by a company I think they were trying to pitch me to join them as an advisor. And I looked into the website and it was a really poorly designed website. And that's generally is a red flag. Not always an issue, but generally it is a red flag. So I started looking into the team, and it was supposedly an Australian-based project, and I noticed some interesting names that wouldn't ring true for the regular Australian, right? So I started doing some research on these names, and lo and behold, I found LinkedIn accounts for them. So I started to dig further, and what I found was the LinkedIn accounts didn't make a lot of sense either. The thing about LinkedIn is you can't find when an account has been established. You can't find the creation date. However, if you look into the positions of the work history of the person, you can get a general sense of what the person has done in their history, and you can use those things to validate the person's authenticity. So things like recommendations from other people, industry bodies they're associated with, because sometimes, like for me with Engineers Australia, I was a registered engineering technologist. So to be in these organisations, sometimes you actually have to be a paying member to be a part of these groups. So anyway, this person wasn't part of any of these groups, and so what I then did, being the autist internet researcher that I am, is I started doing reverse image searches on the images that I got straight off the website. So you can very easily save images directly off the front end of a website, either by going right click save as, or you can actually view the web page as HTML, and you can look at the file name of the images used on there and just type it into a web browser, and you can save them. And none of the images I did in reverse image search were pulling up any results. So then I looked at the images closer, and I noticed that a few of the pixels on the images had been doctored, had been changed. So this person was fraudulently grabbing images, real photos of people, bio photos, doctoring a few of the pixels so people couldn't do a reverse image search on them. So as soon as I saw that, I knew it was a scam. I ended up finding 3 other websites this individual or group of individuals had created. They were all running ICOs at the time. They had an Ethereum address asking for donations, and I reported all four of them to Scamwatch, to the ACCC, as Adam just highlighted. So this was a long time ago. I haven't seen anything as bad since, but that's just a little story of what is out there, but also some really simple ways you can do yourself to conduct a little bit of due diligence and research. That took me probably half an hour, and I found 4 scams. So, these are things you can do just to make sure that you're protected and that you're safe.
Bo, I love the balance between us, because that was really complicated to me because I am not an engineer, but that was fascinating in the way that you reverse searched for a photo. Now, I'm going to put the blonde man perspective on this and talk about some of the easy ways our viewers. Remember, viewers, we want to balance everything that we do out here. So that was an incredible engineer perspective, and I reckon that is brilliant. In fact, you know what, Bo? You should do a video on exactly how you did that, because I want to learn the steps of what you just told me. But going on to the blonde analysis of picking up the red flags, if the site looks dodgy, definitely. If the photos are pixelated, straight away I get concerned. If any of the logos are a bit blurry, that also worries me. Poor English is the biggest flag for me. If there's one grammatical error, even if it's something as simple as a possessive apostrophe, straight away I'm like, I'm on you. And it's this correlation when there's very few times in business, it's not impossible, but very few times will a legitimate business have poor English on their homepage. Poor English, poor pixels, bad images, too good to be true, referring to millionaire people who, when you actually do a search to find, so in this article here, we can see a TV presenter and a billionaire. And if you actually are taking away that amazing engineering analogy that you gave us, I actually went the simple way and looked for the name of the presenter and Bitcoin, and nothing would come up. Then I looked for the name of the billionaire and Bitcoin, and nothing came up. So typically, if you've just done an article on the news or a talk show about something, if you Google that person and the show, it'll come up. And in this instance, it didn't.
Yeah, very good point, Adam. There's so many tools you guys can do. You've got Google, you've got DuckDuckGo. That's another great browser that I've been using, alternative to Google. You've just got, really the world is your oyster in terms of how much information is now available to you in terms of conducting your own due diligence. It's just a matter of having some critical thinking, which you can develop more and more and more over time, especially as you do more and you learn the different tools and things you can do. And just ask people, ask friends, ask people. If you're not that savvy on the internet, just ask people to do a little bit of research for you. Most of the time, people won't have any issues at all.
That's probably the best point, Bo, just before we go on to your article about also what's happening in the financial space. If you've got to put your ego aside. If you look at how wealth and business is achieved, you need to be humble and ask questions. And if you're not sure, just ask. Just say, hey, I don't know about this. And I just want to put a shout out to my friend who sent me that link. Good on her for having the courage to send me the link to say, hey, what do you think of this? And because she did, I could identify it was a scam. But going over into the space of what is not a scam and what's happening in the world around us, what's going on over... Maybe that was a bad segue, because perhaps it is a scam, the RBA. What's going on in the RBA, which should be legitimate, Bo?
Yeah, well, look, we've just had as of today, a statement by Philip Lowe, the Governor, Monetary Policy Decision. So the RBA today has dropped rates again to one of the lowest interest rates it's been. I'm not sure if this is a record, but it's certainly the lowest in a long, long time. So I'm just going to read through a couple of paragraphs and we're going to get into a little bit more data. At its meeting today, the board decided to lower the cash rate by 25 basis points to 1%. This follows a similar reduction at the board's June meeting. This easing of monetary policy will support employment growth and provide greater confidence that inflation will be consistent with the medium-term target. The outlook for the global economy remains reasonable. However, the uncertainty generated by the trade and technology disputes is affecting investment, and that means that the risks to the global economy are tilted to the downside. In most advanced economies, inflation remains subdued. Unemployment rates are low and wages growth has picked up. The slowdown in global trade has contributed to slower growth in Asia. In China, the authorities have taken steps to support the economy while continuing to address risks in the financial system. Well, as anyone knows that follows this channel and follows American economics and politics closely, knows that China is now being heavily tariffed by the United States. The Chinese government is having to print large amounts of their currency to prop up the economy and prop up these companies that are being hurt by sanctions. So these companies don't have to leave the Chinese economy. So the Chinese economy is both being bled two ways. It's restoring the decades of lost equity to the United States on one hand, but it's actually being bled and weakened at the same time as the Chinese government is having to prop up private companies. Next paragraph. Global financial conditions remain accommodative. The persistent downside risks to the global economy, combined with subdued inflation, have led to expectations of easing of monetary policy by the major central banks. That's a good thing, right? A central bank shouldn't know better than the free market. Long-term government bond yields have declined further and are at record lows in a number of countries, including Australia. Bank funding costs in Australia have also declined, with money market spreads having fully reversed the increases that took place last year. Borrowing rates for both businesses and households are at historically low levels. The Australian dollar is at the low end of its narrow range of recent times. So what does this mean? Well, when I am looking at interest rates can essentially control the rate of production in an economy. I want to know what is happening with CPI, Consumer Price Index, because as inflation increases due to debt, certainly here in Australia, things like quantitative easing in the United States and other countries, we see debasement of the currency, and so the spending power of the dollar, of the national currency, goes down. Thus, the price of goods don't change. It's just that the denomination has to be recalibrated because the currency is becoming worth less as it's being debased over time as more is entering supply, right? But what I found very interesting, if we just look at Australia's inflation rate against the Consumer Price Index just in the past 6 to 12 months, and this could be from a lack of data on the part of this website, so just remember that caveat, that there could actually be an error here with the data. However, our inflation rate has been going down since mid-2018. That's a good thing. Less inflation, that's a good thing. Stronger dollar. And at the start of this year, in January, certainly what the data is showing us is that Consumer Price Index has gone sideways, not up. That means that things aren't becoming more expensive. They're not becoming less expensive. They're staying the same. So if inflation is going down, but Consumer Price Index is stable, that is actually a good thing. That is a good thing. Especially as Australia's economy seems to be feeding off somewhat the American economy, which is absolutely pumping. If you own American stocks right now, you have for the past 2 years, I mean, you are singing. You are really, really singing. And things could only be getting better from here on out. So overall, I think this is an interesting move. How this is going to affect Bitcoin and crypto, I often talk about how I see a flight to Bitcoin really happening in countries that are hurting economically, like I spoke about in today's video with Zimbabwe, and like what's been happening with Bitcoin mining in Iran. But here in Australia, I think it's mostly being used as an investment product because generally Western countries are wealthier, so they don't have to go and use a hard currency because the local currency has enough spending power. So anyway, that's my analysis. I think it'll be interesting to see how this plays out, but overall, just based on the data and what I'm seeing, things aren't too bad. Adam, what do you think?
Yeah, I think Australia's quite lucky. We're certainly the blessed country. If you look at some of the other nations out there, Bo, we're spoiled in the sense that we have a small population with a large block of land. And that large block of land, as in the island of Australia, is very resource rich. Now, of course, this can be spent very poorly by giving away resources. In fact, I was listening to an article, I think on ABC News. What was it? We were selling, I think it was $17 per, it was a weird term, I hadn't heard it before, but it was how they use gas. Basically, the Japanese were paying $10 per unit for gas, and we were paying $17 per unit for our own gas. So you could almost get the gas half price in Japan, our gas, and whilst we were paying $17 for our own gas. And there was a politician speaking about it, and I can't remember because it was just whilst I was driving, but it was really powerful. And we know this. We know that with many of the resources that we've sold them, you could buy them cheaper in a foreign land after all the taxes, tariffs, and exporting expenses, the cargo, the shipping. It was cheaper to get certain resources, still to this day, across the ocean than it is to get our own resources in our own country. And that is a terribly broken system. However, you can see that, as you mentioned, although we have these shifts in CPI and inflation, overall the Australian economy is working quite well, especially comparative to other markets out there. Now, the other thing to consider, Bo, is when we know that there's been an article released recently about the property market not so much dropping out, but maybe not climbing as much as it used to be. So it's not going through the roof as we thought property would. And I've spoken to a lot of my fellow investors that have purchased mainly in Sydney. They've spent millions on property, and they are hurting, Bo. They are hurting bad because they are not experiencing the growth. And even with the drop in interest rates, they're not making the returns that they had forecasted. Now, we've been talking a long time about interest rates perhaps going negative, essentially where the bank will pay you. There's a bit more to it than this, but essentially the bank will pay you to lend you money, and when you put money in the bank to save it, you will pay the bank to store money in the bank. This is going to have a big effect on crypto. When you're buying property, I've got a fair bit of property, as I've discussed in some of my other videos. It's really important that people understand the difference between, in economic terms, a real number and a nominal number, or a real value and a nominal value. And property is a good indication, or a good example of that. People sometimes think that they buy, I'll just make up numbers here. So you buy $1 million house, and say 10 years, it's now $1.5 million. Well, that $1.5 million is a nominal number. It's not a real number. The real number is the number compared or incorporates the inflation of that dollar. So once you actually figure out that, say, a house has gone up to $1.5 million, the nominal number says $1.5 million, but the real number may indicate, for example, $1.3 million. But overall, Bo, I feel very blessed and fortunate, and perhaps even, shall we say, privileged to be an Australian. And I'm very grateful that the economy is doing quite well. And comparative to the pullback of the property market, there has been an article released recently on the Daily Hodl about the bull market. A prominent crypto analyst states Bitcoin's still in a bull market despite everyone freaking out. Plus, Ripple and XRP Ethereum, Litecoin and Tron all possibly looking good in the future. So we've seen the market pull back, and an analyst, a prominent crypto analyst, has said, from a new take on whether Bitcoin traders should hit the panic button, to a brainstorming session with Tron founder Justin Sun and Litecoin creator Charlie Lee. Here's a look at some of the stories breaking in the world of crypto. Bitcoin. Popular crypto analyst Peter Brandt says Bitcoin is still in a bull market despite its drop from nearly $14,000 to the $10,000 range. In a new YouTube interview, Brandt says BTC's prior history shows the dip is par for the course, telling Cointelegraph it's no reason to panic. He states that Bitcoin has a record of correcting. If you look back at the price history of Bitcoin, I think there's been 4 or 5 times when Bitcoin's had an 80% correction from a high. We've barely come off 20% here, so we're still in a bull market. We just got ahead of ourselves. Now everybody's freaking out that the market somehow topped out, and perhaps it has topped out for the time being, but I still see Bitcoin as very possibly in another parabolic bull market. We could correct back up to perhaps $900 or perhaps to $9,000. That's a level that I've kind of had in mind as a level where I want to be a buyer. So basically, we're saying, will this thing drop back to $9,000? And if it does it mean we're not out of a bull market? Though, are we in a bull market? I think so. Or are we slipping back into a bear market? Or is it just too quick with too small of market caps to even tell?
I think we're absolutely in a bull market, and I'm going to just bring up a Bitcoin chart to provide some supporting material for my argument. Look, we've seen Bitcoin go from $3,500 US literally just a few months ago to recently hitting $13,000. Okay, so here I am looking at the chart right now. Bitcoin was at about $3,268 in December, 6 months ago. $3,300. Here we are sitting, looking at it right now, after a pullback of $10,225. Right, so what's that in returns? 100, 200, 300%? That's huge.
300% 6 months. I know it's
if that's not a
we forget.
If that's not a bull market, I mean, what is? Looking at the chart, just looking at this graphically, right? Graphically, not even considering prices. Look at how close this recent top was to the peak of the bull market back in 2017. One day this will look like another blip on the chart. Are we still in a bull market? Absolutely.
I saw it. I'll have to bring it up. I'll probably do it next week. There is a chart. Remember, we speak about crypto being 1 year. So 1 human year is like 7 crypto. No, it's the other way around. 7 human years is like 1 crypto year. It moves so quickly. Well, in fact, Bo, it's 10. So for every 1 crypto year is 10 human years. And there was this chart. I'll bring it up next week because I haven't prepared for this, and you've just topped my thinking or sparked my thinking on it. They pulled up a gold chart, right? And they put a gold chart over the history of gold. And then they compressed this chart by tenfold. And then they took the Bitcoin chart and they superimposed it over it. And bro, it is identical. It is. I thought they had doctored the image, but no, I did it myself. And basically, if you take the history of gold and then you compress it by 10 and then you lay it over the Bitcoin history, exactly as you said, this is a minor blip on the radar. I still believe that this thing's going parabolic into the future. Now, parabolic, of course, it's a time scale. When people say Bitcoin is down, I've always said this for years. I've said, well, comparative to what? Comparative to last week, last month, last semester, last year, last decade. If you look at Bitcoin as a 10-yearly candle, it's in green. If you look at Bitcoin as a monthly candle, it's in green. The only time it's not in green as a candle is a yearly candle, but even now it's picked up. I've got to change what I've said, because a few months ago, after we came out of the 2017 massive bull run, where it peaked up at over $20,000 Australian and it dropped down. 2018 was essentially the only annual red candle that we'd seen, I believe, in the history of Bitcoin. But as in all other instances, as a monthly candle, as a decadely candle, as a 5-year candle, it's all green, baby.
Yeah, and look, here's the thing. Bitcoin rewards those with an insatiable desire for knowledge. That was a little phrase I termed about a year ago in Sydney. I'm very proud of it. I think it rolls off the tongue.
Make sure you're painting that.
Yeah, but here's the thing, it does, because with Bitcoin, if you put in the time, the energy, the hours, the research, and you understand this and what it is, you will be rewarded. You will be economically rewarded, because once you get that key understanding of the fundamentals, you don't care about what the markets are doing day to day. You have energy, you have excess energy that you can use to research something else, to put into something else, rather than sitting there doing daily TA. That you'll get wrecked in Bitcoin if you do that. Bitcoin rewards those with an insatiable desire for knowledge, and once it clicks, you're there. And I've mentioned this several times, but if you're new to the space, obviously we have a free course down in the description you can go and do on Udemy. You're more than welcome to. Please do. 4 hours of content. But I must also recommend the Bitcoin Standard, the book by Saifedean Ammous. Still the number one resource I have certainly ever read or come across in relation to Bitcoin, because it ties in Austrian economics and how Bitcoin fits into hard money that encourages a low time preference. And it's just, everything is in that one book. Get it on audiobook, 12 or 13 chapters. It'll change your life. And that's all you'll ever need. As just a regular Joe buying some Bitcoin or investing, it's all you'll ever need.
If it's on audiobook, I'm in for sure. I found that I can do so much with audiobooks, and that is one I will certainly have to read. Have you read both the Godfather's books from Andreas Antonopoulos?
I read the first one. I haven't read the second one. At the time, I was doing my Bitcoin professional certification. So when I read the first one, and so I learnt a ton of technical stuff about Bitcoin. Not that I can't learn a lot from the second one. I need to, but what I really want to read, and I'd be interested to know if you have read it, Adam, is the one on Ethereum, is Mastering Ethereum. I would like to read that one.
It is certainly on my reading list, and I've always had a bit of a bias against Ethereum, but as I said, we all need to be humble and learn from this. But how about what about your godfather? Has Trace Mayer released anything that we should read?
Where Trace has he's written some books. The Great Credit Contraction is one. I haven't actually got to reading that, but where all of Trace's information is in the interviews that he's done and the podcasts. So he has a podcast called the Bitcoin Knowledge Podcast, but it used to be called, I think it was called Run to Gold. That he started doing, and it's so weird. It coincides really closely to Bitcoin's release, but it started off at around like 2017. Sorry, not 2017. Around like 2007, 2008, and he covers gold and the current debt situation in the world, which he calls the Great Credit Contraction, for probably 100 episodes, and then he starts getting into Bitcoin in 2009 when it was a penny, which I think was maybe like 50 cents to $1, and he's telling people to get into Bitcoin then. And his technical understand, and this is, I told you about this. Trace actually talks about how he was somewhat of a mentor to Andreas Antonopoulos at the beginning of Andreas's career in Bitcoin. So this is like the level of street cred that Trace has, but he covers Bitcoin from then on, and his knowledge of law, he's a lawyer, I believe he's an accountant also, his knowledge of law, of money, of Austrian economics, of gold, and then tying into Bitcoin, and his technical expertise in Bitcoin as well is some of the best stuff out there. If you've got the time to go through literally hundreds of podcasts and you want to really know Bitcoin, then go to the Bitcoin Knowledge Podcast.
The father of the godfather. I'll have to tell me about what's happening. Yeah, my friend.
Yeah, so this is an interesting one because it's a very unique product that's starting to show us what is being done with Bitcoin. So we have here an article here from CoinDesk. The S&P 500 gains can earn you Bitcoin on new Bain capital-backed exchange. Crypto investors have a new way to bet on the price of Bitcoin or on traditional assets with the formal launch of Evermarket's exchange, EMX's derivative platform. The Palo Alto, California-based startup was founded 2 years ago and opened the exchange to a restricted audience at the end of May 2019. Effective Monday, the market is now available to participants worldwide, though US residents are excluded. Co-founder Craig Austin told CoinDesk that the company wants to give customers access to a world market by trading derivatives tied both to crypto and traditional assets. While it bills itself as institutional grade, EMX is primarily interested in the retail market. So reading the last paragraph here. We kind of over the past last year and a half built one platform to let traders from around the world trade global markets collateralized in cryptocurrency, he said. That's the key idea for us, to let anyone in the world outside the US to send cryptocurrencies to a marketplace to get exposure to the world market. So no, not just cryptocurrencies, but also equity markets. So essentially what I'm reading in this new product is you are going to be able to get access to excuse me, to markets that are the value is collateralized by Bitcoin and crypto rather than being collateralized by dollars. Now this plays into Bitcoin's role. It's starting to expand from like a retail investment. What's it called? What does Trace call it? A network effect. This is another network effect called. I can't believe it's not coming to me. But it's a network effect essentially that shows Bitcoin is starting to become the base value for other financial products. Hypothecation, it may be called. Rehypothecation is bad, but hypothecation, I believe, is like derivative products being produced off Bitcoin as a base layer, if that makes sense. So this is really interesting because it's starting to show us that we're getting institutional grade traditional products leveraging Bitcoin as the base value rather than dollars, which I think is fascinating.
Yeah, you can actually see that base value coming up on Coin Market Cap. You can actually see on Coin Market Cap now that it's only a new feature, but it's throwing out everyone's mental state, because on Coin Market Cap it used to only be compared, the values used to only be compared up or down to the US dollar. And now the new baseline is Bitcoin. And if you look at all the coins on Coin Market Cap, it's messing with everyone's head, and in my opinion, it's also really affecting how people look at altcoins, because they're like, well, altcoins have gone down. It's like, well, no, they went up to US dollars, but down to Bitcoin. And as Bitcoin goes through the roof, even if altcoins are chasing it slowly, because it's now compared more so to Bitcoin as opposed to the US dollar, and then you go another step further with the US dollar perhaps declining with inflation, but that you can't see that on the charts comparative to Bitcoin. This gap becomes greater. Now, if you look, Bo, at the Bitcoin time traveler, you know what? I released that video a while ago, and it's kind of nuts. If you haven't seen it, guys, check out. I'll leave a link below. Check out the Bitcoin time traveler. It stimulates a lot of thought and a lot of discussion. Now, what's powerful about that video is, besides all his price predictions that he first released from 2013 and have been pretty much spot on the whole way, all the way up to 2019, and he says we're going to hit 100K shortly, and if the Bitcoin time traveler said it, well, it's got to be true. Bit of take a grain of salt with that. But he also says that once it gets past I think it's $1 million mark, we no longer compare Bitcoin to the US dollar. In fact, it supports exactly what you're saying. Once we pass a certain amount, we no longer compare Bitcoin as a relative value to the dirty old pile of fiat currency, and Bitcoin itself becomes the baseline for everything around it.
And here's where it starts getting really powerful into the fundamentals of Austrian economics and free markets, is you are valuing a floated currency that cannot be manipulated by a centralized institution. So the value of that cryptocurrency is being dictated by pure supply and demand principles based on the free market with global 24/7 liquidity. It's not just a commodity, it's also money, because it's being used in normal day-to-day transactions. And that you're valuing goods and services in a currency that is floated free market 24/7 global liquidity. That in itself is so unbelievably powerful, and we had huge successes in the past when fiat currencies were pegged to the gold standard, right? Fiat currencies were pegged to the gold standard. So when countries were conducting international trade, the trades were settled in gold. You didn't have fluctuating exchange rates. They went off the gold standard. We've had the absolute godforsaken mess that we have now with global exchange rates and hyperinflation of currencies. But back in the day, when they had gold reserves and the number of dollars out there in the system, which were essentially notes entitling you to a portion of gold, they couldn't just print as much as they wanted, because that would mean that they would have to get more gold to match what they were printing. So having a system in the future where goods and services are valued in Bitcoin or Satoshis, it will be Satoshis in the future, it will not be in Bitcoin, which is a free market, decentralized, impenetrable currency that is whose rate of inflation is baked into its source code and can't be changed or controlled by anyone, I mean, is truly staggering as to the potential impact, but really exciting as well.
Yeah, it will be measured in. You say Satoshis, I say Satoshis, but you're the Japanese guy. But,
You're probably
tomato,
right.
No, let's call it different. You've got a northern accent. I've got a southern accent. If there are accents in the great nation of Australia, but you're right. My godfather, Andreas, he says we'll know that when Bitcoin has complete adoption. When you ask a person how much is a Bitcoin worth, and they say, well, what do you mean? A Bitcoin is worth a Bitcoin. But I take that a step further, and I think you're right. It won't be how much is a Bitcoin worth. It'll be how much is a Satoshi worth. And they'll say, just as right now, if you say, do the test, I encourage all the viewers to do this. Go up to a kid below 12 and just say to the kid, hey, how much is $1 worth? And really watch what they say. So watch how they think, watch how they react. And I'm presuming, and I've done this test many times myself, I say, $1's worth $1. Or the child will take that dollar and they'll say $1's worth a Freddo frog, something that they can buy with that dollar. And the complete adoption of crypto, as the Godfather says, and as I agree with entirely, we'll know that when there's complete adoption, not when it's just added to our Apple keypad, not when it's just on Excel spreadsheets, not just when we see Australian laws incorporating it into their taxation website, but when a young person says a Satoshi is worth a Satoshi.
It's exciting stuff, mate. I think that's a good segue into our weekly coin picks. Have a look at the market. What did we go last time? I know I went ethos, but it wasn't so much a short-term pick. It was more so just keep an eye out on this project. What did you have?
Okay, I went for Ripple, and I'm almost considering doubling down on this now. Viewers, you know I am not a fan of Ripple, but our weekly picks are not about what we love. It's about the numbers that are going to go up. In many instances, we pick the coins that we do love, but of course, as I've been saying a few times in this episode, we need to let any egos or biases go and see where markets go. I think that rhymed. I didn't mean it to rhyme. And XRP over the last 7 days, let's see, it is in the red, so I haven't done too well, but I feel a little bit better, so to speak, again, just through ego, that most things are in the red, and pretty much everything's in the red, unless I had chosen to go within the top 20 Chainlink, but I wouldn't have picked that. But I have dropped Bo in the last 7 days, 3.43%. So I'm happy to report I didn't drop as much as Bitcoin or Ethereum or Binance Coin or SV, which I would, or Tron or most coins. So I have experienced the least biggest drop.
I don't know what you're looking at, but I'm looking at CoinMarketCap, and XRP is down 15.46%.
Sorry, brother, I'm looking at the 24 hours. I just refreshed my screen, and when I refreshed it, damn it!
Sorry, mate, I couldn't let you get away with that one. I could not.
So, okay, we'll go. Hang on, what have I done? Okay, in the last 7 days, oh man, I'm actually a big loser, Bo. So I've gone down 15.46%. In the last 24 hours, I was looking pretty good.
Hey, it could
As we
be
go
Tron.
further down, I have gone further down in the Bitcoin. I have gone down further than Ethereum, but I haven't gone down as far as Bitcoin SV. God, that is disgusting. And I haven't gone down as far as Tron.
That's okay. That's
And I
okay.
haven't gone as far down as Cardano. So it's still pretty miserable comparative to what you've dropped. I think I preferred looking at those 24-hour mark. What have you dropped in the last 7 days, if anything?
Well, it's hard to find because this only shows, CoinMarketCap only shows the 7 days on the top 100. But if we come over here and look at Ethos, I don't think it's really that much better of a picture, to be honest. They're ranked 355. They're a low cap coin, but they've dropped even further down. This is
why I actually like using coinlib.io, because first of all, I don't make the mistake I just made, because it's a lot easier to read. And second of all, you can go to any coin. So if you open coinlib.io if you want, and you can just go straight to the search and look it up. So I can actually tell you what that was in the last week.
Yeah, I think
What's
it's
the
down.
code?
Ethos. Yeah, I think it looks maybe down like 10%, 10, 12%.
Yeah, in the last 7 days, looking at Ethos.
But I must add, like I said last week, this is not a short-term pick. This was just a project to keep, excuse me, to keep your eye out on, because I think there's some interesting moves happening in the background with it. But I think that's a good segue into the next project that I want to bring you guys, which is a really interesting one that was brought to my attention by a friend of mine that actually works on this project, Simon. Now, this project is called Ampleforth. It's a really fascinating, interesting, complicated project. So I'm over here on the website at the moment, and they call itself Smart Commodity Money. Now, this project is filled with kind of riddles, like deeper meaning behind the words, behind the vision for the project, and we're going to get into some of that into stick. So it says here, what is Ampleforth? Ampleforth is a digital asset protocol for smart commodity money. What makes it special? The Ampleforth protocol receives exchange rate information from trusted oracles and propagates that to its holders of its units, which are called amples, by proportionally increasing or decreasing the number of tokens each individual holds. For traders, these changes in exchange rate and quantity translate into changes in Ample's market capitalization. Traders with short time horizons, especially those using automated or algorithmic approaches, will thus have to devise new strategies to trade Amples. Ultimately, unique trader behavior in response to the protocol's incentives is expected to produce a step function-like movement pattern with lower correlation to Bitcoin than existing digital assets. This makes Amples uniquely suited for the following near, medium, and long-term users. So it says here, near-term use for diversification in cryptocurrency portfolios. Medium-term use as reserve collateral in decentralized banks such as MakerDAO. Long-term use, an alternative to central bank money, like Bitcoin, but macroeconomically friendly. Please note, Ample should not be thought of as a stablecoin. Why was it created? Founded with a mission to create fair, politically independent money, the protocol's creators noticed that commodity monies like gold and silver are naturally fair and independent. Unfortunately, such commodity monies cannot efficiently respond to changes in demand, making them a poor substitute for central bank money. To address this shortcoming, the project's founders designed a synthetic commodity money that propagates price information into supply, much like how thermal expansion propagates nearby kinetic energy into a material's volume in the natural world. Very, very interesting stuff. Now, when we come over here and look at a little bit about the why aren't Amples a stable coin, it says here that it's a misunderstanding to think that because Amples have an equilibrium price target, they can be thought of as an interchangeable with modern day stablecoins. This is not the case. And then we come over here and we look at, there was a little bit here about Ampleforth. Oh, here we go. It's actually on the home page. It's a very, very interesting kind of description about what where the name actually comes from. Except it looks like I've actually lost it. But anyway, moving on to the team. Some interesting guys. We've got people here that worked for Google. We've got ex-Uber engineers. We've got engineers that studied at Yale. And Yale is a very high-tier university in the United States. MIT. Some of the investors. Here's my friend Simon Manko. I actually interviewed Simon. He used to work for iOS Token. And I interviewed him and met with him and had lunch. Really good guy when I was over in San Francisco, and he's actually joined the team. But in the advisory board, we've got Joey Krug from Augur, Sam Lesson, he was the VP for product for Facebook. Some other significant names, we've got Paul Veredicatit from Pantera, and Manuel Rincon Cruz from the Hoover Institute in Stanford. Oh, here we go. Here's the name about Ampleforth. This is really, really interesting stuff. Ampleforth is the name of a character in George Orwell's 1984 who was responsible for translating poetry into newspeak, a language designed to limit freedom of thought. When tasked to replace the word God in a Kipling poem, Ampleforth refuses, not out of righteousness or subversiveness, but rather a simple love for language and respect for truth. To Ampleforth, no other word makes sense in context, and therefore no other word should replace it. Very interesting. Some of their investors: Pantera Capital, Brian Armstrong from Coinbase, Huobi Capital, FBG Capital. So just a very interesting project with really deep, almost symbolic ties to it. When you come over here and look at their Twitter, they've got here a little announcement: success. The first Ampleforth rebase is complete. If you held Ample during the first ever rebase, your wallet should increase by 2.64%. The new total supply of Ample is 51.3 million. However, remember there is a new Ample supply rebase every 24 hours. So Ample adjusts its supply every 24 hours based on the pricing data coming from the crypto markets. And it actually adjusts the number of Amples in people's wallets. So it's like a very complex, technical, different, unique project. We can see over here on CoinMarketCap, it's currently ranked 1,950. It's very much a micro cap. But the current price for an Ampleforth is $1.92. So, yeah, very interesting project. What are your thoughts, Adam?
I think it sounds like something at the moment, looking at the week ahead, Bo, that I've got to be honest with you. For the week ahead, I'm actually feeling a little bit bearish. So, looking at some of those micro caps, it might be an opportunity to jump in there and high risk, high return. But if I were looking at the week ahead for a coin that I had to pick, I got to admit, this is a tough one. I want to shout out to one of my subscribers, Moonboy. He's got such a cool name. He used to be called something else, but he changed his name to Moonboy. And he keeps talking about Maker. Maker this, Maker that. So I'm shouting out to you, Moonboy. I'm talking about Maker. I'm not ignoring it. I don't know if it's my coin pick, though, because it's had a big run-up. Qtum had a big run-up as well. It's a really tough week ahead for me, Bo. So my two picks, and I'm only going to pick one, but my two would be Neo, because I think we're going to see a comeback in Neo. It's already come back, but it could come back further. but this is probably the first time I've picked this coin, and I've got to be honest. I think I'm picking it as a smallest loser as opposed to a biggest gainer. My pick for the week ahead is Bitcoin.
Nice. Well, if I'm gonna have to give a pick, I'm gonna go Bitcoin as well.
Well, that doesn't work.
Well, Ampleforth was a pro. I'm just bringing Ampleforth to people's attention. I'm not saying it's a pick.
All right, then
I'm just
you go
saying...
Bitcoin, noting that I've done it as a default, but I'm going to go Neo as my second one.
Okay.
We only ever do one, but because we both, as a primary, pick Bitcoin, Neo's my second. What's your second?
Well, look, I'll go Ampleforth. I'll back
Okay.
myself up. I'll go Ampleforth. Bitcoin number one, Ampleforth number second. And just before I finish up, I'll just really quickly want to show something people that I just noticed, which is very interesting considering the rough few days. The dollar value of Ampleforth has gone... Okay, I'll just hit refresh and we've just had a big drop. Well, that's interesting. It was going up and then it's just literally dropped in...
I just want to quickly make mention of the Bitcoin dominance. We saw Bitcoin dominance go up to 62%, and it's pulled back to 60.5%.
True.
That's actually quite interesting. That's actually quite a big pullback in fact 48 hours. That's what's causing that, Bo. Why are we seeing Bitcoin dominance dropping?
Probably some of the money's come back into Tether, so people have taken profits and just converted to Tether.
I didn't want you to say that, but it was what I was thinking deep down. I released a video recently, another video about terrible Tether, and I keep saying, if there's going to be an undoing of crypto, it's going to be bloody Tether.
Yeah, well, its market cap is still going up, so that tells me that people are slicing into Tether.
Yeah, but this nonsense of where I can just simply say, right, I've got 10 million Tether now because I work for Tether. It's not connected to anything like fiat currency. It's printed from a central reserve like fiat currency. It can be used to buy real goods and services like fiat currency. It's just a digital fiat.
Mm. Yeah, look, it'll be interesting to see what happens with Tether. You know, they did their IEO or whatever and raised all this money that backed them up for their issues. So, you know, the ship might sail for a couple more years. Who knows?
Yeah. But like fiat currency, they've kept their plate spinning for a while, but eventually it'll get wobbly and fall down. Let's finish on a high, Bo. Closing off, looking at the markets today, we have had a great month. Happy financial new year to you, by the way. I will be, a shout out to everyone, I'm doing an interview tomorrow with an accountant. This will be my second interview with the accountant. The first time I did the recording, it dropped out, but I'm doing another one with him tomorrow. If you've got any questions for me, crypto goers, send it through either my channel or Bo's channel. I'll check out both. Ask us any financial questions you've got about accounting and tax on your cryptos. And if you can get this to me before Wednesday afternoon, the 3rd of July, and they're of value, I'll certainly put them forward, noting we don't give financial advice on this channel, and everyone should have an accountant, in my opinion. That's the only financial advice I give.
Yeah, sounds good, guys. Definitely make sure to take Adam up on that offer. And look, I just want to say thank you for watching, guys. I always appreciate your time watching on this channel. If you haven't liked the video, make sure to give us a like on both my channel and Adam's channel. It really helps us grow, helps the YouTube algorithm know that people are enjoying our content. If you're not subscribed to me, make sure to subscribe. If you're on my channel watching this, make sure to go to Adam's channel and subscribe. Super easy. Just go down in the description when you see a link there for Adam's channel. Click on it, give him a follow. Coming out with consistently with really good content. Leave us a comment. Tell us what you thought of the video. My name's Bo. Thank you again for watching. Adam, over to you for the closeout.
Bo, closing off with Bitcoin just about to drop through the 5-figure mark at $10,080.78. Will this thing drop down to the 4-figure mark? Let's see. Thanks for listening. Happy investing. We'll talk to you next time.